All right, this is for Algebra 2, Lesson 11 on completing the square. And I already grabbed a pen that didn't work. So, all right, when you complete the square, what you want to do is get these terms that have your x's, get them on one side, and get your constant to the other. So I'm going to have this, x squared plus 4x. I'm going to leave a little space, equals a 7. Remember, if it's a negative 7 on this side, when you move it to the other side, you have to change the sign. Okay, there's this magic value that we want to add to each side. So what you do is you take the number right here in front of the x, and you're going to come over here and you're going to half it and then square it. You always half it, then square it. Notice if I half it, I get 2, and 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4, and if I do it to the left, I have to do it to the right. Okay, the whole reason we do this is because we want to write this as something squared. That's why it's called completing the square up here. And the way you do that is, whatever this variable is, you're going to write it down one time, because remember, x squared is going to give you that term. And you remember what you got when you took half of this? Half of that gave you a positive 2. There's two ways to come up with this little number right here. You can either remember what you got when you took half of it, or just think, what is the square root of 4? And it's 2. And then just make sure that sign is the same. Okay, and 7 plus 4 is 11. Okay, once you're at this point, then you're just going to take the square root of both sides, because we want to undo it. Remember, when you take the square root, you have to find both the positive and the negative. These will undo each other, so you're only left with what's inside. So you have x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 11. Then you're just going to move this to the other side, because we want to get the x by itself, and the opposite of a positive 2 when you move it to the other side is a negative 2, plus or minus the square root of 11. And just like that. Okay, let's try another one. Remember, what you do is you take this constant and move it to the other side, so you have x squared minus 2x, leave a little space, equals 11. Now you're looking for this magic value you're going to add to both sides, so you take this number right here and you're going to half it and then square it. Well, you get negative 1, and when you square it you get a positive 1, so we have to add 1 to both sides. So the reason we do that is so we can write in parentheses something squared. So whatever that variable is, write it down, because x squared is going to give you that term. What did you get when you took half of this? What's half of negative 2? Negative 1. And 11 plus 1 is 12. Then you're going to take the square root of both sides. When you take the square root of this constant, don't forget you have to do both the positive and the negative. So we're going to get x minus 1. Because again, these are opposite operations, so they cancel each other out, that square root symbol and the squared, so you're only left with what's inside, plus or minus the square root of 12. Now, we can simplify this. We couldn't simplify the square root of 11, but the square root of 12 has a perfect square in it. Remember, there's a perfect square of 4 in it. So you could pull that 4 out. So what you're going to end up getting, the square root of 4 is 2 square roots of 3. So again, get the x by itself. When you move that 1 to the other side, it becomes a positive 1, plus or minus 2 square roots of 3. Whatever this constant is, just put it out front. Put this ugliness in the back. Okay, you kind of want that plus or minus sign. Just leave it right there in the middle. Okay, what about number 9? Okay, honestly, you're going to take this constant, move it to the other side. And I noticed I could have divided everything by 3 first, but sometimes whatever this number is out front does not go into everything, so I just kind of make this a habit to do it this way first. Feel a sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, this has to be a 1. So whatever this number is, factor it out. Don't go ahead and pull out the x. I know it has an x in common, but only pull out the constant. So you're left with this. Then, honestly, before I ever get started doing anything else, I go ahead and I divide by 3. Both sides. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I have x squared minus 3x equals negative 1. And again, you could have done that at the very beginning, but these don't always come out really nice. Sometimes you're still left with a fraction, so I kind of do it in that order. Okay, we still have to find this magic number we're going to add, so we're going to take this value right here in front of the x, and we're going to half it, and then we're going to square it. Just because this is a fraction, don't stress out. You know that 3 squared is 9, and 2 squared is 4. You don't even have to worry about the negative because when you ever square something, it's going to be positive anyway. If you add 9/4 to the left, you have to add 9/4 to the right. Okay, so what are you going to get right here in parentheses? Well, remember, whatever that variable is, you're going to write it right there. What did you get when you took half of this? Make sure your sign is the same, 3/2. That's what you get, and you can see that's going to give you 9, and 2 squared is going to give you 4. All right, we've got to add these together. We've got fractions, but that's no big deal. Find a common denominator, which is going to be 4. So look what I've got, -4/4, which is a -1, plus 9/4. Well, -4 plus 9 is 5, so you get 5/4. Okay, we're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget it has to be plus or minus. So I'm going to get what's inside. I'm going to move it over here. X minus 3/2 equals plus or minus. Now notice here I've got the square root of 5 and the square root of 4. I don't know the square root of 5, but I do know the square root of 4 is 2. So I can write it just like that. Then take your little constant here, move it to the other side because you want x by itself. If it's a -3/2 on this side, it's going to be a +3/2 on the other side, and you're going to get the square root of 5/2. Realize you could write this as 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 2, since they have that common denominator. Either answer is fine. Same thing. Okay, I'm going to jump to 11b number 7 because I noticed it had a fraction. I didn't want anybody to stress out when they started to do their homework, but we're going to do this the same way. I'm still just going to move this to the other side. If it's a +1/4 on this side, it's going to be a -1/4 on the other side. Still need to find that magic term, so take half of that and square it. Again, just think about what 5 squared is, 25, and 2 squared is 4. So you're going to have 25/4. So just add 25/4 to both sides. Okay, why do we do that? So we can write this as something squared, whatever that variable is, just write it down. And what was half of 5? Well, it's right there in those parentheses. It was 5/2. And in this we already have a common denominator. So we have -1 plus 25, which is 24/4, which is 6. Okay, at this point, remember we're going to undo this. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget, plus or minus. That way I get just what's inside, because they cancel each other out. Plus or minus the square root of 6. Move that to the other side so you can get your variable by itself. So it's going to be -5/2 plus or minus the square root of 6. And there you go. Okay, that should get you set up. Now, I noticed the first few, all they're having you do is practice finding this magic number, and I switched back to 11a real quick. But don't make this hard. All they want, you don't have to solve it or anything, just find half of this term, which is 5. So remember, you take half of that term and then you square it. Well, half of 10 is 5, 5 squared is 25. So that's all they're wanting you to do. So we're going to do it again. Take half of -8, which is -4, square it, and you get 16. So that's it. Remember, half of 8's 4, 4 squared, 16. Okay, here they're making you go backwards. Going backwards is a little bit more interesting. I honestly don't know why they're making you do this, but remember, if you took half of it, then squared it, we're going to do the total opposite. So we're going to take the square root of it and then double it. So the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. And whatever that variable is, make sure you write it right there beside it. And just test yourself. Half of 4 is 2, 2 squared is 4, it works. Okay, let's do this again. Whatever this term is, you're going to take the square root of it and then double it. The square root of 225 is 15, and 15 times 2 is 30. And then whatever that variable is, just tag it on. Okay, and again, test yourself. Half of 30 is 15, 15 squared is 225. Okay, I think I had one, maybe two more. Okay, from 11b, this is off your homework, so I'm trying to help you here because I saw a fraction. And remember, when you divide something by 2, it's the same thing as multiplying it by 1/2. So you're still going to do the same thing. You're going to half it and then square it. This is going to give you 1/6. Just multiply straight across. Square it, and 1 times 1 is 1, and 6 squared is 36. So no biggie. Okay, another fraction, but now we're going to find the middle term, so you're going to go backwards. So remember, you're going to take the square root of that and then double it. Okay, well, the square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 100 is 10. And by the way, you can reduce that. That's going to give you what? 2/5. And then double it, which is going to give you 4/5. So you're going to get 4/5 x. Okay, kind of weird. I know. Oops, not an x. That's a little y, isn't it? My eyeballs are getting old. There you go. And that should do it. Have fun.